This feels like a good moment to go into detail with our chicken operation and how it has evolved over the years to become pretty darn resilient overall. We have ranged between 25 and 65 hens over the last number of years with next to no disease pressure, a tiny bit here or there of old age, good egg production overall, really high quality eggs, and hens that have been happy and healthy. It's cost us very little, and if we weren't able to bring inputs into this system for quite a while, they'd still be able to eat and thrive. I'd like to explain in detail. For those of you that have followed the channel for a while, you're already probably very aware that our whole chicken operation is fundamentally designed on the idea of being a composting system. So in other words, we bring in wood chips, we bring in waste hay, we bring in sawdust, we bring in people's leaves in the fall. Almost all of these are free resources or very low cost resources. And you might say, well, how is a chicken going to eat hay? Well, the combination of objects and things that can break down, carbon, nitrogen, all those things, they add up to creating soil fertility. They bring in soil life. They bring in earthworms, pill bugs, millipedes, and the like. So we do feed our chickens some grain, and I'm going to talk about that in detail in a moment. But for now, the fundamentals, and you might have a chicken system where you could incorporate this without much fuss. Imagine just taking the existing system you have, the space that you have, the chicken yard, and dumping wood chips or dumping old hay. Wood chips you might be able to get for free, or maybe it's worth ordering a truckload of them. Dumping those into your landscape so the soil builds up, even without a whole composting system and all that. Because we use whole grain, which I'll show in a moment, any of their wasted feed that lands on this becomes sprouts. It becomes more food for them. And you can see they really love that. It gives them a lot of pleasure, gives them a lot of exercise, and creates much healthier eggs. And the cost for whole seed rather than processed layer pellets is much, much lower. So even just that one minor adjustment of if you have a static chicken yard, considering bringing in wood chips, bringing in waste hay, old leaves, debris, logs from the woods, stones from a quarry that you can flip as you go, that'll add a lot of resiliency in its own right. Taking that idea and continuing it on where you say, well, let's put the fresh wood chips, maybe even some food scraps at the beginning of an area. You can design this as you go. It doesn't have to be perfect right out of the gate. But by piling this up, letting the hens kick it apart. Now in our case, what we do is we turn it down through this high tunnel, but you certainly don't need this in order to get started. And if you're in a warmer climate, you don't need this at all. But each time we turn this and move it further down, you can see it renews the interest from the hens. It reveals more and more food. It gives them something to work on. It keeps them active. Now in this case, as folks know who watch the channel, we are bringing in food scraps from a few different restaurants and different sources. We put our own food scraps into here. That is optional. It's definitely worth doing. Maybe you can find some waste streams, some restaurants. Are there butcher shops? Are there different options for including actual food scraps? But even just the whole seed, mixed with that sawdust, mixed with those wood chips, the hay, the leaves, that's a utopia of food for our hens for almost no cost. And when this finally breaks down, we get compost that grows much more resilient crops for us in the garden. So in our system, we're at a scale where we actually are trying to generate a very significant amount of compost. The more we can build our beds in a no-till system way with rich organic matter, the higher the quality of the food, the less disease pressure our plants have, and the healthier we are. Does it have to be this scale to be functional? Absolutely not. It can be larger, it can be smaller, but you can see those food scraps and those seeds that I was just turning in that tunnel, after a few weeks, can come out to this resting area and accumulate a tremendous amount of heat. This will kill whatever remaining seeds are in there and give us a compost product that we can put out into our gardens this spring and try to grow with. Is it finished compost? Is it perfect compost? No, but it'll get there eventually. The important thing is we're moving all of this through the system. We're helping our hens be healthy, reducing costs, and we're growing our soil and our own health too. Another distinct benefit that you can see as you watch these hens is that because there's so much activity, there's so much diversity of area to work in, they barely ever fight. Now our hens are almost, on average, 4 to 6 years old, very old for production hens. They give us less eggs than they would if they were brand new and young, but they still are healthy, they're happy, and the quality of the eggs are amazing. If you're interested in having more notes and details on ways to source free food, I'm going to link here to a video where we discuss that in more detail. The comment section in there is incredibly rich. A lot of folks sharing ideas on how they source free food scraps for their hens. Let's take a look at our grain system for a moment though. So we've got the carbon-based materials we add in, we have the food scraps, and now the whole seed that we work with. Now in our case, we're very lucky that we have a relationship with some good friends that have an organic flour mill. We get their waste whole grain as barter. We actually plant trees for them and with them. And we fill these metal garbage cans with hundreds of pounds of seed. I've learned to put good quality tape over the top so water can't get in there. And this is pretty stable for a long time. In fact, these soybeans have been in here for about 3 years and they're still just fine. The chickens don't like them, but we'll figure out something to do with them. Where you live, maybe some suggestions would be to call local places that make feed for chickens. Is it possible to buy in bulk the seeds that they work with before they grind them and pelletize them? Are there Amish farms nearby? Are there other wholesaler options? Maybe you talk to farmers that provide whole seed and ask them, do you ever have bins of blow-off grain or weed grain? In other words, things that they can't sell necessarily. You give them a small amount of money. You say, well, I don't want weed seeds growing in my chicken yard, but there are weed seeds in this. They germinate and turn into little broccolis or brassicas or wild mustards and the like. The chickens eat them up or not, the soil biota will get them if the chickens don't. One last idea that might not be too hard to incorporate. If you don't want to have to dig a whole lot or move compost through a system, consider deep deposition in place. So for example, in this area, in this example we're using sawdust, but this could be any sort of carbon material. We've laid down a deep, deep layer of sawdust, and into it we've mixed food scraps and various other ingredients. And somewhere in here, a little ways back, we added some red wigglers. You can get these from a bait shop or from other friends, or find them in compost and move them. The chickens are getting them before I even have a chance to show you them. They know what's in this pile. And so here's a reserve of incredible protein and food for our hens. There's even millions of tiny little creatures. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but this is teeming with protein and mineral and life that our hens can get. So we're not moving this every day. We let this generally sit, but if we need to give them a boost in protein for one reason or another, we've got this huge cache of living tiny creatures that are underneath this sawdust that our hens can have access to. We could protect this with stones or pallets or tarps if we needed to, but as long as we keep adding more carbon on top, the hens can't get to that core of protein that's in there. It's a great reserve for a rainy day. Let's continue the dialogue in the comments sections. Ask questions if you have them. Please let us know, let other folks know, what do you do to help reduce feed costs, create more resiliency in your chicken system so you get healthy eggs, really healthy and happy birds, and an opportunity to continue to raise them even if the flow and supply of industrial products is minimized in the future. Really hope folks are staying positive and healthy, focusing on the relationships that they have with the natural world around them, and building resiliency where they live. Let us know how we can be helpful, and definitely check out the rest of the chicken playlist if that seems of use to you. I'll link that in the description. And please subscribe. We document a lot of these experiments, a lot of our gardening work, and be part of that conversation. Thanks.